everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to talk about the Raw bloody reunion. Now, first of all, thank you to everybody who joined in and watched our stream. I even made it for the last 2 hours of Raw as well. Apologies for missing the first hour, but never fear because I've watched back everything I could find, and also Adam's helped me out with the grades for the first hour. So that's okay. Yes, if you hadn't realised already, it's time to work out just how good the Raw reunion was. But how do we do that? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. Yes, this is the Raw reunion graded. Oh, here we go. So we started things off with a big name actually to kick off the show, John Cena. And you know what? The crowd were genuinely delighted to see him. He says he's delighted to be here, he's delighted to be home, not because he lives in Florida, but because WWE is his home. Then he says day one, and because he said the catchphrase of a different wrestler, they come out and interrupt him. That's how it works in wrestling, that's the rule. Yes, the Usos come out and cut off John Cena, and it's all a bit heated, but not in a we're gonna fight way, more in a we're gonna have a rap battle way, of course. Cena, for my money, has the most savage line, which I've written down here, don't worry about it. He says, "Respect for calling me out, but ain't no way I'm getting bested. You'll look just like your mugshots. How was it getting arrested?" He actually brought it up. He actually went there. So the Usos do what anybody does in that sort of situation when someone else has said something mean about you. They have their dad for backup. Yes, Rikishi comes out, another big returning legend. There's going to be a lot of them tonight. And he wants to have a little dance because, of course, Rikishi loves to dance. It's what we all know and love about him. He gets in the ring. They're about to dance, but then they're cut off by the bloody Revival. But the Revival have brought backup of their own in the form of Devon Dudley, a classic ally of the Revival. We all know and love that trio from over the years. Yes, Devon Dudley and the Revival. This leads to a standard tag team match with the Usos having Rikishi in their corner and the Revival having Devon in their corner. And you know what? It's a Revival versus Usos match, so it's pretty good. It's just, why is Devon with the Revival? But anyway, the match is pretty good. The finish comes, it's a little bit short. The finish comes when Scott Dawson is distracted because Rikishi and Devon are about to have a fight on the outside, but this leads to him getting distracted. He gets beaten by the Usos and the babyfaces all celebrate. This opening segment gets a C+. It was nice to see John Cena. It was nice to see Rikishi. I enjoyed the rap battle aspect of it, so why doesn't this get a higher grade? The match itself was pretty decent as well. It doesn't get a higher grade because this was the first of many inconsistencies and just sloppy, thrown together writing that really plagued this Raw reunion. Why on earth was Devon with the Revival? We'll never know, but it was a way to get him on the show, and that's why. You know, I like my wrestling to have a bit more of a substance to it, and I know this was a Raw reunion show and a bit of a one-off and everything, but it is still a weekly episode of Raw, and I'd quite like it if everything just had made a little bit more sense. Next up, we have Drew McIntyre and Cedric Alexander, a continuation of their burgeoning rivalry. It's all set up by a backstage segment where, if I get this correct, Santino is hanging out with Alicia Fox, Caitlyn, and Tori Wilson. Alicia Fox, right? She was positioned as a returning legend for much of this show, and I don't understand why. Is she not still a member of the roster? She was never released. I don't understand why Alicia Fox was one of the legends. She was out at the end with all of the legends. I know she's a long-serving member of the WWE roster, but at the same time, she's still there. It's not how legends work. What? Anyway, Santino impresses the ladies by getting his Cobra out. Let's just not dwell on that for too long. And then Drew McIntyre comes along. He's like, enough of this nonsense, scares them all. And then Santino, stands up to him once Drew has already left the room. Drew then heads out to ringside for his match with Cedric, but the match never takes place. Drew actually jumps Cedric during Cedric's entrance. Cedric fights back as well as he can. It's not a total beatdown, but in the end, Drew is simply too big and too strong for him and really does lay in some of those shots, throwing him into the crowd barrier, hurling him into the apron chest first, and just basically getting revenge for Cedric beating him last week. I'm going to give this a B. I think it was fair enough. Not so much the backstage stuff, that was silly, but we're always going to get that in the Raw reunion. But for the in-ring stuff, or the ringside stuff, that gets a B. I know a lot of people will be saying it's just 50-50 booking, it doesn't help anybody, but I think in this instance, 50-50 booking doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. Generally, it can be seen as quite a bad thing, but sometimes it is necessary, and I think this is one of those instances. Cedric, of course, was elevated with a great like huge pinfall victory over Drew last week, and Drew really needed to get his revenge this week. Otherwise, he would have looked a little bit too weak. So I don't mind the 50-50ness of this feud so far, and I actually am quite entertained by it too. So a B grade, and honestly one of the stronger things on the show for my money. Next up, we get a tag team match between the Viking Raiders and Curt Hawkins and Zack Ryder, the Edgeheads, the Major Brothers, the lads, the New York boys. Christian's out for commentary on this one, which I guess makes sense because tag team wrestling. Lillian Garcia is the guest ring announcer, which is also nice to see. This match isn't quite a squash match, but it didn't last very long. You know, it was nothing groundbreaking. The Viking Raiders picked up a pretty comfortable victory over Ryder and Hawkins. I'm going to give it a C+. I think it was the correct decision to have the Viking Raiders beat Hawkins and Ryder. It's sad to see Hawkins and Ryder, you know, slide so far since they were Raw Tag Team Champions, but at the same time, their reign was never capitalised on properly, and they, you know, being brutally honest, they should be being used to get a newer, bigger team over in the tag division. So I have no problems with that. The match itself was quite short, as were a lot of matches on this show, because they just had to make room for here's a legend doing something stupid, and here's another one. So I understand why it was cut short, but I'd like to have seen it go a bit longer. But C+, right booking decision, unspectacular match, but it got the job done. Next up, here comes Samoa Joe to cut a heel promo where he literally just tells the truth. He says, yeah, I'm not going to celebrate anything tonight. I think it's disgraceful. I think these Raw reunion shows are a poison and are a plague upon WWE. And I think we've all got this weird obsession with nostalgia, and I hate it. And I was like, Joe, you're speaking quite a bit of truth there, friend. For example, he says, you know, we could have seen himself, Samoa Joe, doing what he does best, laying waste to everybody, but instead we got the Usos spitting limericks at John Cena with the help of their daddy, Rikishi. So, yeah, Joe's just sort of telling the truth a little bit, and we're meant to boo this man. But because Samoa Joe badmouthed the Usos, here comes Roman Reigns to defend his family, and he says, you know what, if you got anything to say about my family, say it to my face. Joe says, I've already said it. And Roman Reigns goes, you're Samoan as well, you know how this goes, we're going to have to fight now. And they do. They brawl for a little bit. Roman Reigns gets the upper hand because he is the big dog, and then Joe rolls out the ring, grabs a microphone, looks like he wants to get back in the ring, but then he decides against it like a heel, and then gets on the mic and spits some more savagery. Joe says he's not interested in entertaining these people, he's not going to do anything to satisfy them, and refuses to get in the ring to fight Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns then says, I'm sorry everyone, just want to let everyone know, not all Samoans are cowards. And suddenly Joe is ready to fight, and they have a match after commercial break, of course. The match is totally decent, a little bit house showy with, you know, just a big baby face and a big heel. And in the end, Roman Reigns gets the clean as a whistle victory with the spear. Now, I'm going to give this a B- just because the action was totally fine. Of course, it was going to be good. It's Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. They're both good wrestlers. But I would have liked to have seen maybe, I'm not expecting them to book Samoa Joe to beat Roman Reigns, although I would have enjoyed it. But I was expecting maybe some sort of screwy finish or a double count out or something that would have not further buried, you know, Samoa Joe after losing to Kofi Kingston in such clean and decisive fashion. I feel like Joe needs to be higher on the card, needs to have more success, and just needs to be booked stronger. But the match was fine, the segment was okay, it gets a B-. Next up, one of my least favourite segments of the night. It was Miz TV with special guest Seth Rollins. Okay, so remember that Roman Reigns promo where he said suffering succotash, and that's been remembered as the turning point where the Roman Reigns hate finally overspilled and everyone was just like, why are you pushing this guy? Or remember when John Cena was facing CM Punk across the ring in Boston after CM Punk had just cut an awesome promo, just before Punk accused Cena of becoming the New York Yankees. Before that, Cena talked about how he also hates Vince and he wants to take a crap on him or walk him outside in the crap and wipe some dog crap on it or something like that. And it just came across as so childish and such a badly written babyface promo in the face of someone like CM Punk, who was cutting these fire promos all the time. This was Seth Rollins' potential moment, like the Roman Reigns suffering succotash promo, like the John Cena dog crap thing that he talked about. I really hated this writing. So Miz talks about Rollins losing the Universal title to Brock Lesnar and how he feels heading into SummerSlam for their rematch. And Rollins does an impression of Paul Heyman announcing Brock Lesnar, but it's so painfully cringeworthy. I think Rollins may have been getting booed during this segment. I certainly wasn't a fan of him because of how badly the promo was written. I'm not saying that was Rollins' fault. He tried to make the best of it, but he just couldn't. You know, he did an impression of Paul Heyman mocking Brock Lesnar, and then started talking about how Brock Lesnar's got bulging eyes and big veins in his neck. And I was like, what are you doing? You should be devastated and angry at this man for taking your title away from you. You should be vengeful and angry. But instead, Rollins came across like Cena at his worst, or like Roman Reigns at his worst. It was really painful to watch. He then talked about how he's not a Lesnar wannabe, Lesnar is a Rollins wannabe, which just makes no sense. And then Paul Heyman rightly cut him off and said, right, I'm going to come out there now. He talked from Gorilla for a little bit and then headed out onto the stage and basically said, Rollins, you're wrong, like Lesnar's a beast, and did a very Paul Heyman promo, which was then cut off by Rollins saying, Paul, you got 5 seconds to get out of here or I'm going to come down there and stomp your head into the stage. And Heyman dropped the mic and ran off all scared, and we're meant to think, oh, Rollins, you're so cool, but it didn't resonate with me at all. Rollins then hypes his upcoming match with Styles later on, and I'm going to give it a D- this segment. I might be overreacting a little bit. I'll be interested to know what you guys thought in the comments section down below. But honestly, I really, really hated this. This was, I'm always a big fan of Seth, and I always try and give his booking the benefit of the doubt. And of course, he's great in the ring, but I can't excuse this. This was woeful, and if I was Seth, I'd be livid with how my character was handled this week. I really do fear for Seth, especially his status as a top babyface right now. Backstage, Sami Zayn is, like Samoa Joe, cutting a savage promo on the Legends and is telling the truth. It's just telling the truth. I was agreeing with a lot of what he said. But he is interrupted by Rey Mysterio, who says, no, Sami, do not forget who paved the way for you. And then behind them in shot, I'm sure it was like Kelly. And I get what Ray's saying, but I don't know if Kelly's really paved the way for Sami Zayn's career. I don't know if, you know, his El Generico run in Ring of Honor was inspired by Kelly's extreme expose. But anyway, this led to a match between Sami Zayn and Rey Mysterio, and like the Joe and Reigns match, it was decent action because both men are really good wrestlers, but at the same time, what happened next was absolutely unbelievable. My favourite bit of the night by far. So Zayn decided to bail out of the ring because he didn't want any more of Rey Mysterio, and he tried to leave heelishly, but he was stopped. His exit was barred by just a classic quartet of superstars that we all know and love from times gone by. Basically the Four Horsemen incarnate. First of all, we had Rob Van Dam, Impact contracted Rob Van Dam, who came out to block the way. He was joined by his classic tag team partner, Sergeant Slaughter. He was joined by the Hurricane, and finally all three men were joined by Kurt Angle. That's a classic team from years gone by. Who could forget that Survivor Series when Rob Van Dam, Sergeant Slaughter, the Hurricane and Kurt Angle ruled the roost? They inspired the Shield, lads. They inspired the Shield. Because he was faced by the greatest stable in wrestling history, obviously Sami Zayn got back in the ring because he didn't want to go through them with their excellent teamwork and just the years of experience together. And he was beaten by Rey Mysterio, who hit the 619 and then a 5-star frog splash in honour of Rob Van Dam. This gets a D, right? I'm sorry, the action was decent, but what the hell was that? What the hell was that? What was that? Did they book too many legends and then think, oh, we need to fit Rob Van Dam, Sergeant Slaughter, Kurt Angle, and the Hurricane all into one segment? Do it there. I'm joking, but am I? Because now that I've said it, I think that might actually be what had happened. Anyway, let's move on to Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. Great matchup, great rematch. Let's see if it went well. It really didn't go well. It was actually my least favourite segment of the entire night. So the pair start wrestling, and like Rey Mysterio and Sami Zayn, and like Samoa Joe and Roman Reigns, it's decent because they're both good wrestlers, but it doesn't get very far at all. Because what happens is, well, first of all, the club back down Seth Rollins on the outside. It looks like they're going to get involved and basically lead a 3-on-1 beatdown. But instead, Seth is saved by D-Generation X. Na 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 na. Suck it, suck it. Triple H and Shawn Michaels come out because they're friends with Seth Rollins, I guess. No, you know what? It does kind of make sense. Maybe it's because the club have been saying they're the best faction ever and all that. Maybe DX didn't take too kindly to that. Who knows? But Triple H and Shawn Michaels come out and they basically even the odds. And it leads to a commercial break. And then when we come back, we now still have Styles versus Rollins ongoing, but Styles has the club in his corner and Seth Rollins is backed up by D-Generation X. Yes. So they wrestle a little bit more, but again, it doesn't last very long before the club beat down Seth Rollins for the DQ finish. DX get in the ring to try and save the day, and now suddenly the club want to be friends. They're like, remember the last Raw reunion when we all two-sweeted and we buried the revival? And DX are like, we do remember that, but we're friends with Seth Rollins now, so you can suck our penises. No, well, they didn't quite. They told him to suck it. It all leads to a brawl. DX clear the ring, and then the club gets some steel chairs, and you're like, oh no, Triple H and Shawn Michaels are in trouble. They're going to get beaten down with steel chairs. Don't worry, because, oh, you didn't know? your ass better call some. It's Road Dogg to save the day. And he didn't come alone. He brought the cavalry. The cavalry in this instance is X-Pac and also Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. Not members of D-Generation X, members of the NWO. The polar opposite of D. It doesn't matter. You know what? It doesn't matter. All the lads get in the ring and the club bail and they're rubbish and the old guys are better than the new guys and too sweet and suck it and WCW and WWF and Monday Night Wars, and this segment gets an F grade. I'm so sorry, but oh my god, this segment is what is wrong with Raw reunion shows. And I'm not saying the concept of a Raw reunion wouldn't work if it was done properly, but when they do stuff like this, it doesn't make Styles look good or the club, and it doesn't make Rollins look good either, because he looked like a dork who was just happy to be there. It gets an F, and I really did hate it. It was my least favourite part of the show. Next up though, an instance of WWE using a legend properly. This is what Raw reunion should be. This segment that I'm about to talk about is the perfect example of how it can be done right. So Mick Foley is out and he wants to talk about his favourite Raw moment of all time. He's briefly interrupted by a 24/7 title chase, and don't worry, we're going to recap all the 24/7 shenanigans in just a little bit. But Foley's out, he's talking about his favourite Raw moment, he points to the Tron and it plays the classic moment where he won the title on Monday Night Raw as Mankind. We all know and love it, but then the video slows down and breaks apart and gets distorted, the lights shut off, and when they come back up, Bray Wyatt's in the ring and he puts Mick Foley on the canvas, not with his sister Abigail, but with the mandible claw, and it's unnerving, it's creepy, it's cruel, it's heelish, and it's pretty terrifying, and I thought it was just the perfect use of Mick Foley, because Mick Foley's one of the most beloved baby faces in all of wrestling history. What better way to make sure that Bray Wyatt is a full heel than by having him beat down Mick Foley with his own finishing move as well. A- grade, I loved it, and if it leads to Foley basically giving the mandible claw over to Bray Wyatt long term, even better. I thought it was wonderful. Yeah, maybe the 24/7 thing shouldn't have happened in this segment, which is why it gets an A-, but at the same time, I have no other complaints. I thought it was great. Looking forward to seeing what Bray does next. Next up, it's a moment of bliss with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross and their guest Becky Lynch, but she doesn't get to talk for long before she's cut off by Natalya. And for a split second, I thought it was Bret Hart, because Natalya's opening sting is very similar to Bret's, of course, and I think maybe a few of the crowd thought it was as well, because it's Legends Night, but it wasn't. It was Natalya. But it's okay. But it could have been Bret. Basically, Natalya and Becky exchange words and then brawled. Some of the topics they touched upon were like Natalya trying to draw similarities between her and Becky's career. They first met when they were wrestling in Japan, I think she said. But then Becky went, no, our careers aren't similar. I won the title at WrestleMania, which is quite a fair point, actually. Natalya didn't take too kindly to that. Becky said she was going to embarrass her in her home country of Canada at SummerSlam. Natalya was basically cutting an intense promo, not quite as intense as last week where she said, you're a bitch, I'm going to pull the horseshoe out your ass, but it was still intense, and then they had a little brawl. It wasn't the best segment ever, but it did sort of get the point across. I'm going to give it a C+, because there were some weak points as well. First of all, one of the weak points is that it's weird how Alexa and Nikki's whole storyline has just been put on hold for now. That's just paused, let's deal with some other stuff. That's a bit strange, but I guess maybe they're still going to lead to something down the line, hopefully. Also, this whole Becky and Natalya dynamic isn't quite clicking for me yet. I don't know which one's the heel. Maybe there doesn't need to be a heel. Maybe it's just a fiery, competitive rivalry between two tweeners. But at the same time, I think they need to make that more clear. I get the sense that we're meant to be cheering for one, and I don't know who it is yet. It's a little bit wishy-washy for me, and that did drag the segment down a little bit. Their brawl could have gone on for longer before it was broken up too, but that's not a major complaint, that's just a minor one. So C+ is the grade. Certainly not the worst thing on the show, but not one of the big high points either. Right, now let's go through all the 24/7 stuff that happened on this show, because there were a lot of title changes and a lot of shenanigans, and let's just do it. Let's just get right into it right now. So first of all, Drake Maverick and his wife and Carmella got into an argument, and that distracted R-Truth long enough for Drake Maverick to roll him up and win back the 24/7 championship. They all ran off, and then the Godfather came in and danced with Charlie backstage. That's just one of those things that happened tonight. Later on, Drake Maverick went to collect his bag from backstage, but it was full of worms. Oh God, it was the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman scared Drake Maverick enough that he was then pinned by Pat Patterson. Fair enough, Pat Patterson was once a hardcore champion under 24/7 rules, so I can sort of see what they're doing. Yeah. But later on, Pat Patterson's on the floor. He's been jumped by Gerald Briscoe, who is now the 24/7 champion. But then Briscoe was congratulated by Kelly Kelly, who then booted him in the balls and became the first ever woman to hold the 24/7 title. Later on, Kelly was celebrating with Candice Michelle, and then Melina came along, my favourite, and unveiled a referee shirt that she was wearing. This led to Candice getting the roll-up on Kelly, and now Candice Michelle is the 24/7 champion. She did a bit of a dance to celebrate, and then she was immediately tapped out by Alundra Blaze, who said, "I'm not going to be champion for long." She's going to put it in the trash. So then Alundra Blaze came out and stood next to commentary, pulled up a trash can and said, "I'm about to do it again." And commentary are like, "She's going to do it again." Totally underselling the original moment where she pinned the title on WCW TV. That was such a historic and meaningful moment, and it shifted the whole landscape of the wrestling industry. And without it, you could argue the Montreal Screwjob might never have happened. But instead, we're getting Michael Cole and Renee going, "Oh, she's going to do the trash can thing again." Maybe I'm just being a bit of a grump, but it didn't resonate that well with me. Anyway, she never got a chance to pin the 24/7 title because then Ted DiBiase came out, the $1 Million Man, and bought it from her. Then DiBiase was about to leave in his limousine, but was pinned inside of it by Drake Maverick. We didn't see the pinfall. I'm sure that it was legit. Let's just not question it. Then we had that whole chase throughout Mick Foley's segment, and then later on we got the final twist in the tail. Drake Maverick about to leave the arena in his own limousine, only to be rolled up by R-Truth, who then dived into the limo pulled away, and Drake Maverick was left without his title and without his wife, who was in the limousine as it pulled away. Oh my god. So now we have Carmella and Drake Maverick, who presumably are going to go and try and find R-Truth and Drake Maverick's wife. I don't know, but yeah, I enjoyed that as an ending. It keeps me interested, but a lot of the stuff was just a little bit weird. You know what, I'm going to give it a B-. It wasn't on such a high level as the comedy of like the honeymoon stuff or the wedding stuff that Drake Maverick and R-Truth have been absolutely killing it over the past couple of months. But at the same time, it was kooky and crazy and silly, and there were a lot of legends involved and a lot of weird stuff went down. But if it was ever going to happen on, Raw, then this was the best time to do it. In a curious way, it actually fit with the craziness and the strangeness of the Raw reunion show. So I can't penalise it too heavily, even though some of the segments didn't quite connect. I'm going to give it a B-, and I think that's probably fair. Next up, all this stuff on this packed show, but they still had time to fit in a Braun Strowman squash match. I would have liked to have seen Braun Strowman face, an actual regular member of the roster, but this jobber, this enhancement talent dude, was good. I enjoyed him. Don't know his real name, but he could bump like a boss. It was great. Braun Strowman picked up the win, obviously. I'm going to give it a C+, just because of the great effort put in by this local talent dude. He was great. Commentary took a shot at AEW, calling him Randy Rowe. I think Corey was like, "Did you say Brandy Rhodes?" And then they were like, "No, we said Randy Rowe." I think. I didn't quite hear it, but there was definitely a shot fired somewhere in there. I think. Yeah. Can someone help me out with that? Was there? Let me know in the comments, please. And finally, the final segment of the night, a toast to Monday Night Raw. Ric Flair led all of the legends out onto the stage. Hulk Hogan came out and cut a boring-ass Hulk Hogan promo, and then the glass shattered, and we got Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin was basically given free reign. Here's the mic, Steve, go out and just say what you want. And he did. It was emotional in a way. It was really rambling and strange, but at the same time, the man has such electrifying charisma that it was always going to be good. You could give Austin a microphone and a dictionary and he'd spin gold out of it. And he just sort of did. I mean, it was odd and it was funny at times and it was silly, and he did just list off a bunch of food and everyone went, what? But he also touched on some emotional moments. He talked about how it was great to hang out with Hulk Hogan for the first time ever. He talked about how he ran into Ron Simmons and they just fell into each other's arms because they missed each other so much. He talked about how it was great to catch up with the Boogeyman, and I liked it. But then he led everyone into the ring for a beer bash, and Alicia Fox was there again, front and centre. I didn't quite understand. Apart from that, the segment was kind of feel-good and kind of ended Raw on a happy note. Austin insinuated that himself and Gerald Briscoe had done something illegal in South Africa, but he didn't quite touch upon it fully. Don't really know what that was about. And then he was kind of overrunning, so they had to cut him off with his own music. They went off the air, and everyone was having a few beers. I have some thoughts on this. I'm only giving it a C, right? And I know that Austin's great, and I know that it's all a bit of fun. But is this not symbolic of the entire point of why we don't like the Raw reunion shows? Is it not taking away from more established, more relevant people who need to get over desperately and just kind of saying, look how great we used to be? And I love Austin, and he's one of my favourites of all time, and he's one of the best on the microphone ever, and I can't deny that. But as a moment, it really felt hollow to me just because of what it meant, what it represented. All these old-timers in the ring, maybe not some of them actual old people, but all of these former superstars in the ring and Alicia Fox, taking the spotlight away from current relevant superstars. So it only gets a C grade, as fun as it was. Overall, I'm giving the Raw Reunion show a D grade. I wasn't impressed with it. And where was Sid? Sid was meant to show up as well, and he just didn't. I hope he's all right. Raw gets a D grade. It was okay for what it was in terms of like the Bray Wyatt stuff. That worked. The Strowman squash match, I guess. But a lot of it wasn't okay. A lot of it was, oh, let's wheel out Austin again. Everyone loves him. Let's pop a rating and then go back to the same old stuff. It really doesn't help. I think it's actually more detrimental to the product long term than it is beneficial in the short term. Especially that's all kind of symbolized by that awful segment where the club and Rollins by association were kind of buried by D-Generation X and the Outsiders, or by the segment maybe where Sami Zayn was chased back into the ring by just a random assortment of old superstars, RVD, Sergeant Slaughter, the Hurricane and Kurt Angle. We all love them. Anyway, yeah, Raw gets a D. I wasn't impressed. There were some fun moments and some funny ones as well, but as a cohesive product, it didn't hit the mark for me at all. Let me know what you think. I'll be really interested to hear, and thank you very much for watching. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.